Thank you, JF. I'm pretty well wired here, so hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you all for coming. Obviously, all the email barrages from yesterday had some impact on the attendance here today, so I appreciate everybody coming out. And let me also give my thanks to the search committee for the opportunity for me to speak to you today. I thought I would start with a question that I've already been asked about 3 or 4 times today, and it's probably on the minds of many of you, and I'll probably be asked this question 3 or 4 more times over the course of this whole process. And that is, why do you want this job? The short answer is that I'm passionate about agriculture research. As JF said, I've spent most of my career in agriculture research, and I'm interested in it. Not just agriculture research for plant pathology or plant sciences, but animal sciences and natural resources and environmental issues. I've always had a broad interest in science and agriculture research. I'm glad to be a department head. We have, I think, some of the best faculty in the Department of Plant Pathology. Some of the best researchers I've ever been associated with are in the Department of Plant Pathology. But I've always had an eye for sort of the big picture, how research is conducted, how research is planned, how it's implemented. For those of you who know me, you know that I pay attention to the annual appropriations bills. I read the Farm Bill. I like being engaged in federal research, the national perspective, the regional perspectives. This is something that I've always been interested in. I've always been looking at the big picture. And I like the diversity of issues that, that surround agriculture research. I also like administration. I like being an administrator. Everybody contributes in their own different way. Some of us are bench scientists, some of us are field scientists, others are IT specialists, and my personality type, I think, is suited to be an administrator. I like solving managerial problems. I even enjoy the day-to-day administrative functions of an organization to help it run smoothly. I also enjoy strategic planning. I like looking at where an organization is positioned and where it needs to be in a year or 2 years or 3 years. So this is the kind of a position that would give me an opportunity to be engaged at a national level, at a regional level, across many different disciplines. It would give me an opportunity to contribute something, hopefully in a meaningful way. And that's basically the appeal for me for this position. I was reading an article in Science not long ago, and they were writing about trends in agriculture research. And one of the terms that they use to refer agriculture research in the point that we are today is that these are transformative times. I like that term, transformative times. Makes it sound like something really big, is about to happen. Some ominous thing is just going to fall upon us. But actually, change happens slowly. And if you look at how agriculture research funding has been over the past 5 or 6 years, it's been declining for at least that long. We're more aware of it now because of all the noise that's coming out of Washington about the deficit and reducing discretionary funding, and of course agriculture research falls within discretionary funding. So we're more aware of it now. But this decline in ag research funding at the federal level has been happening for the past 4 or 5 years. Now I admit it's been declining more precipitously in the past year or 2 than it has been before. But I think that things are going to turn around. I think this is going to be self-correcting over time. The only question is how far we go down before it actually levels out and cycles back up again. If you look at the history of agriculture research funding in this country, it's had its peaks and valleys. We're definitely in a valley right now. But as I said, I think this is going to be self-correcting, and I think over time it's going to swing back up again. So there's really very little that we can do in the state of Arkansas that's going to have any major influence in these trends of agriculture research funding. It's going to be really hard for us to have an influence at the national level. But what we can do is position ourselves in such a way that good things can happen to us. And I think that if we pay attention to what's happening, if we follow these trends and we position ourselves in the experiment station in such a way, I think good things will happen to us. And in 2 or 3 years, we'll be a stronger experiment station now than we are now, even with this transformative trend that we're seeing right now. You know, this economic engine called agriculture is a big drive in our society today, and we need to position ourselves in such a way that we can be able to attract funds through good programs. I think we're a small experiment station by national standards, but we can be the best or one of the best experiment stations in the country. So let me just say also that I'm not interested in being an experiment station director. I'm interested in being the experiment station director at the University of Arkansas. I have no interest in going to a neighboring university or any place else in the country to be an experiment station director. I think that with the state support that we have, the commodity support that we have in Arkansas, this is the best place to be. And regardless of how the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks go, I hope that I at least have the privilege of finishing my career at the University of Arkansas. So that's my story. I got it off my chest now, so I can actually get into the presentation now. I'm not going to spend very much time talking to you about my background. I think my CV is up on the division web page, and you're here more to listen to me talk about what I see the future for the experiment station, and not so much about what I've already done in the past. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background on some relevant experiences that I've had that are relevant to this position. I'm going to focus most of the talk on the future and where we're going to go. I was born on a small farm in western Maryland, and there's several things I learned from growing up on a small family dairy farm. Growing up with 9 brothers and sisters, I learned that there's great value in diversity of an agriculture operation. Certainly the dairy paid our bills, but we grew corn for silage, we produced wheat and barley for straw and for grain. We had pigs, we had chicken for eggs, we always had a big vegetable garden. So the value of diversity was very apparent to me at a very early age. And that diversity carries over to my understanding of what's happening in Arkansas these days with the diversity of agriculture that we have in this state. The other thing that I learned in growing up on a small dairy farm is that I don't want to milk cows for the rest of my life. Twice a day, 365 days a year. So I went to college. I got my bachelor's degree in biology at Shippensburg State University in Pennsylvania, my master's in plant pathology at Colorado State University, and my PhD at West Virginia University. My PhD degree was actually in a forest pathology concentration. I did my dissertation on chestnut blight. And when I graduated with my PhD, I wanted to get a job with the Forest Service, and instead, I got a job as a research scientist with AAES working on biological control of weeds. So biocontrol of weeds is a far cry from forest pathology. But this was the late 80s, jobs were tight, and this was the opportunity that came up. I did this for a few years, and another opportunity came up for me to work for the Agency for International Development. And I spent about 3 years working on some agriculture projects, primarily in Uganda and in Kenya. It was a great experience for me. I came back to AAES and after a couple of years became Director of International Programs. This was my first administrative experience. We had a fairly sizable staff. We had 6 laboratories. Most of those were biocontrol laboratories overseas in Argentina and France and China. And I bring it up here because not only is this my first administrative experience, but I got involved in a lot of cross-disciplinary agreements with other countries. I worked to set up projects on fruit flies with Mexico, on foot and mouth disease with Russia, with listeria projects with the INRA in France, with H5N1, with TSCs, and a number of different things that kind of gave me that flavor of multidisciplinary research and cross-disciplinary research that got me out of my plant pathology mode of thinking. After that, in 1999, the AAES administrator came to me, Floyd Horn, Annie, if you remember Floyd, came to me and asked me if I would go to work for one of the intelligence agencies to work with the intelligence analysts to identify vulnerabilities in the U.S. agricultural systems. This was a great experience, and even though it was only for about a year, just a little over a year, I bring it up because it gave me the opportunity to look at our complete agriculture infrastructure, everything from the farm gate to transportation to storage to food processing to food safety, and we looked at the total infrastructure for the intelligence agency to help them identify vulnerabilities that bad guys could exploit. So I went to meatpacking institutions. I actually went to Russia and Kazakhstan, and I visited a couple of locations there where during the former Soviet Union time they were weaponizing certain animal diseases and crop diseases. I visited OTAR, where they were actually weaponizing, back in the Soviet times, they were weaponizing foot and mouth disease. They were weaponizing African swine fever and hog cholera. I went to a plant research facility in central Siberia where they were weaponizing wheat stem rust, all with the idea that they were going to attack the United States back during the Cold War period. Of course, they're not doing that research now, but a lot of the researchers that were in that program at that time are still there. So it helped me identify, again, and provide the intelligence analysts, not only at DIA, but that other intelligence agency that ends with an IA that we're never supposed to talk about. So I did a lot of my work at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, but over in Langley, Virginia. In order to do this, I had to have a top secret SCI security clearance. And I figured I didn't have any skeletons in my closet, at least none that I thought anybody would care about. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to have a top secret security clearance. The problem is, one of the requirements of having a top secret security clearance is that you're not allowed to tell anybody. Right? So I'd go to an airport, I still had to go through screening. When I went into a county courthouse, I still had to go through metal detectors. I didn't get any kind of a badge or any kind of an ID. I didn't get a secret decoder ring. I didn't get any of that stuff. So what good did it do me? The only people that knew that I had a top secret security clearance were other people with top secret security clearances. So it was really a disappointment. So after I came back from that assignment, I was appointed the National Program Leader for Plant Health. We had 65 CRIS projects in my program, 147 SYs, annual budget at the time of $68 million. I was a principal point of contact on crop health issues. So when the Secretary of Agriculture or the Undersecretary needed a briefing paper, or if there were commodity groups or groups coming into Washington and wanted to know what AAES was doing, I was usually the guy they went to for information. I worked very closely with industry groups and stakeholders. Whenever, you know, the wheat people came to Washington to lobby for their interests, or whenever the Watermelon Association came to Washington, I met with them. When the pickle packers came to Washington, I met with them. The citrus group, I mean, you name it, they all came to Washington, and they met with the Undersecretary and the Secretary, and I usually sat in on those meetings and talked about AAES's research mission. I developed the AAES budget request for plant health. I directed and redirected resources. I tried to make sure that our research projects were focused and aligned with other projects within the agency and with our land-grant university partners. I developed strategy plans, and I made sure that we were accountable for what we did. In 2009, as JF said, I came to the University of Arkansas as the head of plant pathology, and I have a three-way appointment. I'm not going to talk anymore about what I've done since I've been here. Again, it's on my CV, and I think, again, you're more interested in knowing where we go from here rather than what I've been doing in the department. Although I have to say I've really thoroughly and completely enjoyed it, and I've tried to blend our research program with extension and with teaching. So in order to get an idea of where we need to go and how, as I said before, to position ourselves strategically during these times and to put ourselves in a position where good things can happen, I think we have to look at some of the challenges that we're faced. Of course, world population, depending on what you read and who you believe, world population is expected to increase to 9 billion. Agricultural demand is projected to grow by 70 to 100%. And this is not just food production, but this is food quality. These are food issues. People today, they want blackberries that are big and tasty. They want fruit 12 months of the year. They want kiwis in January. So as our society becomes more affluent, the demand is not just for agriculture production and the quantity of food, but the quality of food. People, our society, demand nutritious food and high quality, safe food. I think another challenge that we're going to be faced with is this competing interest between natural systems and agricultural systems. We're not going to be able to put more land into agricultural systems. So there's always going to be this competition. Finite natural resources. Water is going to be a big issue across the country. And as our population becomes more mobile, there's going to be shifts in our population. We're already seeing that. So we have to deliver food from where it's produced to where the people are. Changing weather patterns. Call it climate change, whatever you want to do. We see that happening right now, and I think there's enough information out there now that this is an issue that we're going to be dealing with for a long time. Trade liberalization. There's several free trade agreements that are waiting to be signed right now with Panama, Colombia, South Korea. I think we're going to see global agriculture increase more in the next few years. Food safety and food quality, of course, I mentioned a little bit ago. And as I talked about before, diminishing federal support of research. This would be Hatch funds, this would be McIntyre Stennis and forestry, AAFRI programs. If you look at this, and this was taken out of a publication from this year, I guess. I think it was called Scientific Progress. This is our total national budget for research. This is applied research and basic research. This is not research development. Since 2001, it's increased by 7.3%. USDA is over here. This is the total USDA budget. This would be NIFA's budget and ARS's in-house budget for agriculture research. You can see where we fit in to the bigger scheme of things here. Of course, NIH is the big monster out of this. DOD is up here, but this doesn't include the defense budget. This is just the federal research budget for DOD. If you look at the total DOD budget, I mean, it's off the page. I wanted to point out how well NIH has been doing. They've had a 17% increase since 2001. USDA's budget has shrunk 16%. Now, you could argue that NIH has been successful because people care about human health. That's an easy thing to sell to the American people. But in agriculture, we're involved in human health as well. Safe food, nutritious food. But for some reason, our message is not reaching the general public. We're not communicating our message effectively enough. And I think part of that is because there are different conflicting groups saying different things when they go to Washington when they talk to their legislators. They don't have a single clear message the way NIH does. NIH has also the advantage that they are basically one institute. USDA has several two agencies, several programs, and several different funding sources. Show you another graph here. This is the trends in research expenditures in agriculture going back from 1920 all the way up here to 2010. This is from an ERS publication that came out just last year. When I put this up on the screen, it kind of skewered the graph a little bit, but this should be 2010 right here. It just kind of got pushed over a little bit. So I need a little explaining here. According to the ERS economists, they present three different scenarios here. In scenario one, they're showing basically a flat budget for agriculture research, but the economists took in the inflationary factors into the equation. They estimate that the cost of doing agriculture research in terms of inflation is about 3.74%. So if we have a flat budget in USDA without any compensation for inflation, expenditures actually trend in this direction. In scenario two, this is research in real dollars. So this would represent basically a budget that's increased by the 3.74% inflationary factor, according to the economists. And even with an increase in real dollars of 3.74%, real expenditures basically are flat. The third scenario is an increase in 1% a year, plus the 3.74% factored in for inflation. And this is the trend with a 1% increase, or a total of 4.74% increase. So these are basically the trends here. And right now, we are definitely on this trend right here. Now, I doubt that this will actually continue to 2050 here. I think we'll begin to see some more squiggly lines like this. But this gives you some perspective over historically how agriculture research funding has been going. It kind of peaked in 1994, and then it's been kind of declining since then. That's what I mean. Change has been slow, and we've been seeing decreases in agriculture research funding for several years now. This is nothing completely new to us. So what are the strengths of agriculture in the state of Arkansas? What is it that we can rely on to help put us in a position where good things can happen? And I believe that if we develop good programs, funding will follow. So let's look at the strength of agriculture in the state of Arkansas. Agriculture accounts for $17 billion in value added to the economy, 275,000 jobs, or 1 in about every 5 or 6 jobs. Agriculture provides over almost $11 billion in labor income. And agriculture and forestry together account for over 10% of the state's gross domestic product. This I took right out of that little glossy brochure that we all know and carry around in our pocket all the time. I just happen to have it out of my pocket right now. We have it memorized though, right? So if we break this down a little bit further, and the strength of agriculture in Arkansas that I referred to earlier is because of this commodity diversity. If you look at row crops here on the crop side, 61,000 jobs or $2 billion in labor income, poultry, egg, broiler production, beef, dairy products, swine, forestry, paper products, sawlogs, 27,900 jobs, paper products, 13,000 jobs, and of course, aquaculture. It's this broad agriculture base that we have in the state is the reason why we're doing so well at the experiment station. What are the strengths of the experiment station here? First of all, we have, I believe, an organizational structure that serves the state well. We can deliver relevant research and extension throughout the state. You're all familiar with this map. You've seen this here. We have several campuses. We have 5 research and extension centers, 8 branch stations. We have representation in every county of the state. It's this broad coverage of the state that is the strength, I think, of the agriculture experiment station. We're out there, we're present, we represent every corner of the state. And I think that's one of the strengths of the experiment station. A portfolio diversity that's matched to our resources. We have 5 research centers, plus the Institute of Food Science and Engineering. It's these centers that deliver the information throughout the state to our stakeholders. And we have a diversity in our portfolio that covers a wide range of different topics: rice processing, textile science, food safety, my wife's favorite, the equine program, and a number of other things as well. And we have a strong state commitment to agriculture here. The percentage of the state budget that goes to the experiment station is the highest in the 12 southern AES universities. That kind of state support is really critical to our success. And we have strong stakeholder support. The commodity groups, the associations, the federations, we get a great deal of support from those folks. And it's because of the administrative structure that we have in the experiment station. So with these benefits and the structure that we have, the state support that we have, how can we position ourselves during this transformative time to do good things and move the experiment station forward? The first thing we have to do is maintain our relevance. We have to nurture state support. I think we have to ask ourselves the question, who cares about what we do? If we can't answer the question, who cares, then why are we doing it? I think we need to make sure that our research is relevant. We need to make sure that we have support from the promotion boards, the Farm Bureau, associations, commissions, and across many different areas. We need to do relevant research. We have to maintain our focus and do the kinds of research that we do well. Applied research, basic research, traditional research, but we have to embrace innovation. We have to learn new technologies, rely on our innovation, and do the best research that we can possibly do. We have to maintain a strong applied research program that's responsive to the state, but we have to embrace new approaches. We have to understand the trends and the opportunities in the state, and we have to avoid being marginalized. And what I mean by that is we can't just chase every little grant opportunity that comes up. If it's not part of our strategic plan, if it's not part of what we do well, if it's not part of our strength, to build strength on strength, we can't be out chasing every little grant because there might be an opportunity we can get a little bit of money. That would quickly marginalize us and make us less relevant. I think we have to maintain a strong partnership at the experiment station with the Cooperative Extension Service. We have to form linkages with the extension faculty, the specialists, the district people, even the county agents. And I'm not suggesting that all of our research scientists in the experiment station needs to know every county extension agent. But we certainly need to be able to work with the extension faculty to make sure that the cutting edge research that we do is delivered down to the county extension agent level. And I'll make a big statement here. States that have abandoned their extension programs have generally failed. We all know what's happening at a lot of the other land-grant universities. Look what's happening at Michigan, at Iowa, at Illinois, a number of universities not far from us. When they start to close locations, combine locations, reduce their presence across their states, they're setting themselves up for failure. And that's one thing that I feel very strongly about, that here, part of our strength is that we do have state representation all across the state. Our research and extension centers are highly visible, and we need to make sure that they're strong and viable. I think the other thing that we need to do at the experiment station is maintain a strong relationship with the Bumpers College and the academic colleges on campus that award degrees. The extension experiment station faculty need to be involved in teaching, be engaged in scholarly activities. We need to develop a creative involvement with the academic programs, scholarships, internships. Somehow we need to work with the campus to make sure that we're in line with the priorities of campus. I think we can engage in recruitment, enrollment, and retention goals. Many of our experiment station faculty advise students, and that's important, and I hope that we would be able to continue to do that and develop this strong relationship. We need to be competitive. It goes back to the comment I made about being innovative, doing good research. We have to be competitive in our grantsmanship. We have to adapt to the changing funding realities at USDA, NSF, other funding organizations. We need to navigate through this whole new agriculture paradigm, these transformative times that we're in. And we need a director who can pay attention to where these opportunities may be. We have to look at what the new and future realities are. And I think we have to look at multi-state, regional projects and multidisciplinary projects. I think the days of RFPs for a single institution and a single PI are gone. We're not going to see RFPs come out that are small projects that one PI at one university can be competitive at. I think we're going to see larger, and we have been seeing this, larger RFPs. They're looking for multi-state, multi-organizational, multi-PI proposals. We have to look at cross-disciplinary combinations of research to provide science-based solutions. We have to look at traditional production and processing, something that we're strong at, food safety, nutrition, product development, environmental issues, water and energy, and economic development in rural communities. And I think we need to look at the private sector and our federal partnerships. Unlike federal research expenditures in the federal research budget, private sector research budgets have actually been going up. We need to look at the kinds of relationship that, say, poultry science has with Tyson's, with the relationships with Monsanto, Syngenta. You know, we produce the graduates that they hire. So they have a very keen vested interest in the kinds of research that we do because we're training their future employees. And I think we can capitalize on those private sector partnerships more than we do. Federal partnerships, our relationship with AAES. Annie is here. The relationship that she has with the Poultry Science Department is a good example of the kinds of partnerships that work well for the experiment station as well as for AAES. We have the station at Stuttgart, and I think we need to continue to look for opportunities to strengthen the federal partnerships with AAES and other federal organizations. So what kind of leader do we need at the experiment station? I think we need someone who knows how science is planned, so how it's financed, how it's accomplished, how it's impeded, how it's reported, and how it's developed. We need to have someone who sees the big picture and knows how science is done. I think we need an experimentation director who can engage in national and regional dialogue and what the appropriate direction of how the land-grant universities can serve. Now, Dr. Cochran has been very much involved in discussions at the national level about, you know, where we position ourselves, and I think we need to continue to do that, and the experiment station director needs to work with Dr. Cochran in engaging in this dialogue. We need to continue to nurture state support, our agricultural leaders, our farm organizations, our commodity boards, our associations and commissions. We need an experimentation director who can identify current issues affecting the state, where the division can provide added value. Someone who's good at portfolio management. We need a director who can identify and solve managerial problems, formulate and communicate goals in a direction. It's hard to get behind a leader if the goals are not communicated well for that organization. So it's important to be able to communicate. We need to encourage participation and foster an environment for open exchange of views, engage faculty and staff at all of our campuses, all of our research stations, all of our branch locations, and to get everybody involved and have them claim ownership to the direction that the experiment station is moving in. We need a director who can create opportunities. Good programs will attract funds. At the personal level, I think the director should be someone who can accept input, be flexible. It's okay to change a decision if a logical explanation for it can be used. There may be better ways of doing things. We need a director who's results-oriented, who can stay focused on the collective goals of the faculty and the administration, who can promote an integrated division with research, extension, and with campus. We need a director who can make decisions after careful consideration of the benefits and the negative detrimental effects that are available. So those are a few of the things that I think we need in an experiment station director. And if I could just leave you with a few points that I would like just to summarize things. If I were given the opportunity to be the director of the experiment station, I would be your advocate, not just for plant sciences, but for animal sciences, for food sciences, for environmental programs, for natural resources. I would be an advocate across all of the disciplines within the experiment station. I think it's important that I would support all relevant research programs, and I would make every effort to make sure that we embrace state support and stakeholder support. So with that, I will ask if you have any questions. And hopefully I haven't gone over too long. Yes, John?
Dr. Bennett, you had a bullet there on the slide about private and public partnership. And I wondered if you had any examples or expansion on that. I'm assuming you were talking about technology we have and somehow partnering with private entities to develop it further or fund or something. Do you have thoughts related to that?
Yeah, private partnerships whereby we can deliver some research that would benefit the private sector companies, you know, CRADAs, technology transfers and things like that, but also educational programs as well. You know, working with the private sector companies that might be willing to sponsor an internship program or a scholarship program with the intent that our graduates would then move into employment opportunities for those companies.
You mentioned increasing competitiveness for grantsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to looking at larger and larger grant proposals, multi-state and such, what do you see that could be implemented to make a typical person more competitive with federal grants?
So the question is, what do I see as an opportunity to make our faculty more competitive?
Yes.
Okay. I think there are a couple of things we can do. I think the workshop that Dr. Cochran organized last year on grant writing with Oklahoma State University is a good example of what can be done, particularly for younger faculty who haven't had a great deal of experience in writing grants. These kinds of workshops that offer advice and guidance on what a good grant proposal looks like. I think there are things we can do with partnering younger faculty or faculty who are not as successful in writing proposals, partnering them with those faculty who have been very successful in writing grant proposals. Bring those faculty in a multi-PI proposal. and engage them in the process and help them learn how to write good grant proposals, how to identify the key areas that reviewers look for when they're evaluating proposals. Yeah, Steve.
You made reference to relationships between the experiment station and Fayetteville campus in your remarks. What one or two or three ideas do you have about ways to strengthen those relationships?
Well, I think probably the first thing the director needs to do is have a regular dialogue with the dean and with the provost. Regular meetings. Develop that kind of a relationship where it's not just whenever there's a problem or whenever there's an issue that needs to be resolved, but on a regular, ongoing basis. I would hope that the experiment station director would be involved in campus meetings and dean's meetings and get more directly engaged in campus priority setting to make sure that the division and the experiment station aligns with the priorities that the academic programs are involved with. Those are a couple of things I think that we can do to enhance that relationship and maintain that relationship. Yeah, Rob.
Where do you see the role of international programs in the portfolio for the experiment station, and how do you see yourself being the advocate to make the case that this is an important part to constituents in the state, that we need to be involved at the international level?
Yeah, so the question is, what role does the experiment station have in developing international relationships? It's hard for the general public, I think, to understand the value of international collaboration. What I think a lot of the public don't understand is that many of the issues that we face in the state of Arkansas are also the same issues that are faced by our international partners. We don't have the expertise in the experiment station to do all things for all people. There may be expertise in other countries that we can rely on to help us solve our problems in the state. So I think we need to communicate that in such a way that that the value of international collaborations are apparent. So I think international collaborations are very important. We can't do everything ourselves, and we don't have the expertise to do everything ourselves. And so those kinds of collaborations, and quite honestly, there's a lot of good research that happens outside the United States. And we need to be aware of what's going on. We need to be aware of the literature. We need to know what research is going on. And the only way to do that is to have a direct dialogue and a direct connection to some of these international institutes, like INBRA, like Embrapa of Brazil, any number of others.
Besides the experiment station and the college, there's another group that seems to want to be at the table when it comes to our research programs here at the university. That's the Department of Higher Education, and their desire to see productivity in degrees and things like that, and not take into account the true research mission that many of our departments provide for the state. I mean, it's not just PhDs.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see yourself fitting into the debate over how we structure our departments here within the college and are responsible to the Department of Higher Education then when they want to do audits?
That's a tough one. The first thing, Doug, I think we have to understand is that the Division of Agriculture's budget is a separate budget from the campus budget, and it's in a separate appropriations budget, and I think we need to be sensitive to that. So the level to which the experiment station can get involved in teaching and the priorities of higher education, we have to be very careful how we do that. I'm not exactly sure how that relationship would work out. And I'm not so sure that I can answer that question. I'm not so sure. I don't really fully understand what the Department of Higher Education priorities are, where they fit in. Certainly the experiment station, I think, needs to support the academic programs and needs to support higher education. But the degree to which we can do that, I think we have to be very careful. There's a certain recognition about how funds are used in the experiment station that we need to be sensitive to. So it may be more than just funding, but I think we have to at least be aware of that. Yeah, Bruce.
Funding doesn't look particularly optimistic over the near future. And if VP Cochran were to come to you and say, Rick, you know, I'm a little bit concerned about the budget in the future, and I want to have a lot of flexibility in terms of hiring, I think we ought to do away with tenured positions, not have any new tenured positions in the next 5 years. What would your advice be to him?
Just in economics.
Well, Bruce, I think tenure is a good thing. I think it's very difficult for us to attract the brightest and the best researchers in the country if tenure is not part of the equation. It's going to be hard to retain the good faculty that we have if tenure is not part of the equation. But quite honestly, you know, that's a decision that the experiment station director is not going to make on his own. That's a discussion that needs to happen with Dr. Cochran and with the system's president. Where I come out on that, it's too early for me to say. I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I think there needs to be a really hard look at that if that were a possibility. I think there needs to be a real in-depth discussion about that, but the decision is going to be made beyond what the experiment station director can do themselves.
Right. You would be consulted for advice, not for the ultimate decision.
Right. Yeah, John.
Rick, you mentioned that we're probably going to see more funding from private sources, meaning Monsanto, or certainly we have a lot of grower group funding in our research. What are some of the issues that you think we need to be aware of as we get more involved with private industry funding research, as far as how we do business here at the university, or our image to the public?
Well, let me repeat the question because I'm not sure that Fred is hearing it here. You're asking if we engage in more private sector partnerships and we receive funding from the private sector, how do we reconcile that with what we do?
Well, it's different than getting public support. So what are the issues that we need to be aware of as we get more involved in the private sector?
Well, certainly the proprietary rights that are associated with that. We're a state institution, and quite often these private sector companies are looking for, you know, proprietary considerations. So we need to be very careful about that. I think we need to use some of the agreements that we already have in place with companies like Monsanto. I think we need to be very careful about what commitments we make to private sector companies before we engage in any kind of thing like that. And that's not something that the individual faculty member can do. I think this is something that, you know, the experiment station director and other people in the division need to take a hard look at. I'm not discounting the opportunities for getting private sector funds, but I think we need to be very careful about what kind of commitments we make to them for delivering research.
In recent years, USDA and DFA have gone for very large programs. They are $5 million, $10, $25 million projects. Where science, it's been very difficult for scientists to come together very quickly to come to these programs. Secondly, they've been very unhappy because the research programs essentially they generally don't fit into their normal methods of single investigator roles. So I think the general consensus is that it's not been very successful. okay, if such a position is taken in the future, how would you, from the state, lobby at that level to make it more equitable for example, the rights or in the best interests of scientists and best interests of agriculture production?
So your question is, how would I influence NIFA's decisions on their priority areas? Well, NIFA's priorities are moving targets. I think we all kind of recognize that. We never know where they're going to go. They always have a public comment period where anybody interested can provide comment in the direction that NIFA is going. And I think we need to be able to engage the national program leaders at NIFA and talk to them before RFPs are actually come out or while they're developing the priority areas and express opinions to them. They do listen to people and they actually look for input from outside of USDA about what's important. They don't make those decisions in a vacuum, and they do consider input from outside. So I think that needs to be done early on in the process. Once they've already made their decisions and defined what their priorities are, it's already too late to have any influence in that. Last year, of course, you know what the AFRI program areas were, what their priorities are. This year it's going to be completely different. And it's going to be different because there was a huge amount of public opinion expressed about weaknesses in their programs and gaps in their program where there are not opportunities for different groups or different areas of research to be engaged in. So I think it's important to engage the national program leaders at NIFA early on in the process and express our opinions.
So do you plan to have such a thing in place? Sort of a plan?
Well, I'm not sure the experimentation director can develop a plan for NIFA. We certainly can express our opinion, but I don't think that NIFA is actually looking for a plan from outside. But certainly I think the experiment stations across the country can work together to have influence on NIFA's priorities.
Since the Technology Licensing Office reports to this position, could you give your thoughts on entrepreneurial activity for Division IP?
My thoughts on entrepreneurial activities for IP? I don't know. I don't know that I can answer that question right now. That's an excellent question, and that's actually something that I have not given a great deal of thought about, but obviously it's important.
I wonder if you'd share your views on social science research and its role in the big picture of experiment station research.
Social science research. In the state of Arkansas, rural communities is very important. It's a very important issue. And so I think there is a role to play in the experiment station for social sciences research. I think it's part of the overall diversity of research that we do. And in terms of what areas of research in the social sciences are important or in priorities, I would have to talk to your department head and talk to all of the faculty and learn more about what's going on and see how that fits into the broader picture of things.
You said that you would try to direct money towards successful programs. How would you go about assessing the strength of a particular program within the experiment station?
How would I assess the strength of a particular program in the experiment station? mean, there are some of the obvious indicators is, you know, is research being published? Are technologies being delivered? Are people influenced by that kind of research? I think working with the stakeholder groups and providing feedback to us, to the experiment station for how successful programs are. I think those are some of the things that we can do. I think we have to look at the strengths of various programs sort of in broad terms. And again, it kind of goes back to, you know, who benefits from it and who really cares about it and how successful it is in actually delivering outputs and having impact. We'll go back to Steve.
You mentioned several times in your presentations the importance of relationship with stakeholders, and I agree. There are going to be times when the research that we do is going to potentially come up with the facts or things out of that research that may imply things for those stakeholders that they don't necessarily want to hear. How do you propose to manage those relationships during those times?
So the question is how I would manage stakeholders who are not completely satisfied with the research that we do.
How are you going to tell a stakeholder group that has funded research, you know, within the experiment station potentially, and the results are not necessarily what they had in mind?
I don't know that we can change the results. If they don't like it, then, I mean, data is data and public and information is information. I don't think we can skewer information to tell them what they want to hear. If they're not happy with it, you know, we can support them in any way we can, but if they're not happy with the results, we have no control over that. I think data is data, and if it doesn't work out to the way that they would like it, then that's the way science is conducted. Thank you.
Good seminar. Very good.